Hello everybody, Liz here, and this time I'm going to be reading to you the prologue for John Dies at the End by David Wong, and I posted a recording of this before, but I'd used my camera and the sound quality came out to be just absolute garbage, so I just went ahead and got rid of it, and I'm gonna do just a better version of it without picture and stuff. So I'll just preface this by saying that this is one of, and I know I said this on my haunted videos, but this is for reals one of my favorite books of all time. The sequel to it, which is titled "This Book is Full of Spiders," seriously dude, don't touch it, that is my favorite book of all time. It's so fucking good. But yeah, this isn't really meant to be a ramble, so I'll just go ahead and get to it. Solving the following riddle will reveal the awful secret behind the universe, assuming you do not go utterly mad in the attempt. If you already happen to know the awful secret behind the universe, feel free to skip ahead. Let's say you have an axe, just a cheap one from Home Depot. On one bitter winter day, you use said axe to behead a man. Don't worry, the man was already dead. Or maybe you should worry, because you're the one who shot him. He had been a big, twitchy guy with veiny skin stretched over swollen biceps, a tattoo of a swastika on his tongue, teeth filed into razor-sharp fangs, you know the type. And you're chopping off his head because, even with the 8 bullet holes in him, you're pretty sure he's about to spring back to his feet and eat the look of terror right off your face. On the follow-through of the last swing, though, the handle of the axe snaps in a spray of splinters. You now have a broken axe. So, after a long night of looking for a place to dump the man and his head, you take a trip into town with your axe. You go to the hardware store, explaining away the dark reddish stains on the broken handle as barbecue sauce. You walk out with a brand new handle for your axe. The repaired axe sits undisturbed in your garage until the spring, when, on one rainy morning, you find in your kitchen a creature that appears to be a foot-long slug with a bulging egg sac on its tail. Its jaws bite one of your forks in half, with what seems like very little effort. You grab your trusty axe and chop the thing into several pieces. On the last blow, however, the axe strikes the metal leg of the overturned kitchen table and chips out a notch right in the middle of the blade. Of course, a chipped head means yet another trip to the hardware store. They sell you a brand new head for your axe. As soon as you get home, you meet the reanimated body of the guy you beheaded earlier. He's also got a new head, stitched on with what looks like plastic weed trimmer line, and it's wearing that unique expression of "you're the man who killed me last winter" resentment that one so rarely encounters in everyday life. You brandish your axe. The guy takes a long look at the weapon, with the squishy, rotting eyes, and says, in a gargling voice, "That's the same axe that beheaded me." Is he right? I was pondering that riddle as I reclined on my porch at 3 a.m., a chilled breeze numbing my cheeks and earlobes and flicking tickly hairs across my forehead. I had my feet up on the railing, leaning back in one of those cheap plastic lawn chairs, the kind that blow out into the lawn during every thunderstorm. It would have been a good occasion to smoke a pipe had I owned one, and had I been 40 years older. It was one of those rare moments of mental peace I get these days, the kind you don't appreciate until they're over. My cell phone screeched, the sound like a sonic bee sting. I dug the slim little phone from my jacket pocket, glanced at the number, and felt a sickening little twinge of fear. I disconnected the call without answering. The world was silent again, save for the faint applause of trees rustling in the wind, and crumbly dead leaves scraping lightly down the pavement. That, and the scuffle of a mentally challenged dog trying to climb onto a chair next to me. After 2 attempts to mount the thing, Molly managed to send the chair clattering onto its side. She stared at the toppled chair for several seconds and then started barking at it. The phone again. Molly growled at the chair. I closed my eyes, said an angry 5-word prayer, and answered the call. Hello? Dave? This is John. Your pimp says bring the heroin shipment tonight or he'll be forced to stick you. Meet him where we buried the Korean whore. The one without the goatee. That was code. It meant, come to my place as soon as you can. It's important. Code, you know, in case the phone was bugged. John, it's 3 in the... Oh, and don't forget, tomorrow is the day we kill the president. Click. He was gone. That last part was code for stop and pick me up some cigarettes on the way. Actually, the phone probably was bugged, but I was confident that people doing it could just as easily do some kind of remote intercept of our brainwaves if they wanted, so it was moot. 2 minutes and one very long sigh later, I was humming through the night in my truck, waiting for the heater to blow warm air and trying not to think of Frank Campo. I clicked on the radio, hoping to keep the fear at bay via distraction. I got a local right-wing talk radio program. I'm here to tell you, immigration, it's like rats on a ship. America is the ship and all these rats are coming on board, y'all. And you know what happens when a ship gets too many rats on board? It sinks. That's what. I wondered if a ship had ever really sunk that way. I wondered what was giving my truck that rotten egg smell. I wondered if the gun was still under the driver's seat. I wondered, was there something moving back there in the darkness? I glanced in my rearview mirror. No, a trick of the shadows. I thought of Frank Campo. Frank was an attorney heading home from the office one evening in his black Lexus, the car's wax job gleaming in the night like a shell of black ice, Frank feeling weightless and invincible behind the greenish glow of his dashboard lights. He senses a tingling on his legs. He flips on the dome light. Spiders, thousands of them, each the size of a hand. They're spilling over his knees, pushing up inside his pant legs. The things look like they're bred for war, jagged black bodies with yellow stripes, long spiny legs like needle points. He freaks, cranks the wheel, flips down an embankment. After they pried him out of the wreckage, and after he stopped ranting, the cops assured him there wasn't a sign of even one spider inside the car. If it had ended there, you could write it off as a bad night, a trick of the eyes, one of Scrooge's bad potatoes. But it didn't end there. Frank kept seeing things, awful things, and over the months, all the king's doctors and all the king's pills couldn't make Frank's waking nightmares go away. And yet, other than that, the guy was fine, lucid, as sane as a sunset. He'd write a brilliant legal brief on Wednesday, and on Thursday he'd swear he saw tentacles writhing under the judge's robes. So, who do you go to in a situation like that? I pulled up to John's building, felt the old dread come back, churning like a sour stomach. The brisk wind chased me to the door, carrying a faint sulfur smell blown from a plant outside town that brewed drain cleaner. That, and the pair of hills in the distance, gave the impression of living downwind from a sleeping, farty giant. John opened the door to his third-floor apartment and immediately gestured toward a very cute and very frightened-looking woman on his sofa. Dave, this is Shelley. She needs our help. Our help. That dread like a punch in the stomach. You see, people like Frank Campo and this girl, they never came for our help when they needed a carburetor rebuilt. We had a specialty. Shelley was probably 19, with powder blue eyes and the kind of crystal clear, pale skin that gave her a China doll look, chestnut curls bundled behind her head in a ponytail. She wore a long, flowing skirt that her fingers kept messing with, an outfit that only emphasized how small she was. She had the kind of self-conscious, pleading helplessness some guys go crazy for. Girl in distress. Makes you want to rescue her, take her home, curl up with her, tell her everything is going to be okay. She had a white bandage on her temple. John stepped into the corner of his tiny apartment that served as the kitchen and smoothly returned to place a coffee cup in her hands. I struggled to keep my eyes from rolling. John's almost therapist-like professionalism was ridiculous, in a room dominated by a huge plasma screen TV with 4 video game systems wired to it. John had his hair pulled back into a neat job interview ponytail and was wearing a button-up shirt. He could look like a grown-up from time to time. I was about to warn the girl about John's coffee, which tasted like a cup of battery acid someone had pissed in and then cursed at for several hours, but John turned to her and in a lawyerly voice said, "Shelley, tell us your story." She raised timid eyes to me. "It's my boyfriend. He won't leave me alone. He's been harassing me for about a week. My parents are gone, on vacation, and I'm terrified to go home." She shook her head, apparently out of words. She sipped the coffee, then grimaced as if it had bit her. "Miss Morris," she said, barely audible. "Miss Morris, I strongly recommend a women's shelter. They can help you get a restraining order, keep you safe, whatever. There are 3 in the city, and I'll be happy to make the call. My boyfriend, I mean. He's been dead for 2 months. John cast a little gleeful glance my way, as if to say, See how I deliver for you, Dave." I hated that look. She went on. I didn't know where else to go. I heard, through a friend of mine, that you handle, unusual problems." She nudged aside a stack of DVD cases on an end table and sat the mug down, glancing at it distrustfully as if to remind herself not to accidentally drink from it again, lest it betray her anew. She turned back to me. "They say you're the best." I didn't inform her that whoever called us the best had pretty low standards. I guess that we were the best in town at this, but who would you brag to about that? It's not like this shit has its own section of the phone book. I walked over to a cushioned chair and scooped out its contents: 4 worn guitar magazines, a sketch pad, and a leather-bound King James version of the Holy Bible. As I tried to settle in, a leg broke off and the whole chair slumped over at a 30-degree angle. I leaned over nonchalantly, trying to look like that's exactly what I had expected to happen. "Okay, when he comes, you can see him?" "Yes, I can hear him too. And She brushed the bandage on the side of her skull. I looked at her in bewilderment. Was she serious? "He hits you?" "Yes." "With his fist?" "Yes." John looked up from his coffee indignantly. Man, what a dick. I did roll my eyes this time and glared at John once they stopped. I don't know if you've ever seen a ghost, but I'm guessing that if you did, the thing didn't run over and punch you in the face. I'm guessing that's never happened to any of your friends either. "When it first happened," Shelley said, "I thought I was going crazy. Up until now, I never believed in ghosts," I finished. "Right." That line was obligatory, everybody wanting to come off as the credible skeptic. "Look, miss, I don't want it. I told her we would look into it tonight," John said, heading me off before I accidentally introduced some rational thought into this thing. "He's haunting our house out in town name removed for privacy. I thought you and I could head over there, get out of the city for a night, show this bastard what's what." I felt a burst of irritation, mostly because John knew the story was bullshit. But then it suddenly clicked in my mind that yes, John knew, and he had called me because he was trying to set me up with this girl. Button cute, dead boyfriend chanced to be her hero. As usual, I didn't know whether to thank him or punch him in the balls. 16 different objections rose up in my mind at once, and somehow they all canceled each other out. Maybe if there had been an odd number. We headed out in my Bronco. We had told Shelley not to drive herself in case she had a concussion, but the reality was that, whether or not her story was true, we still had vivid memories of Mr. Campo and his unusually spidery car. You see, Frank found out the hard way that the dark things lurking in the night don't haunt old houses or abandoned ships. They haunt minds. Shelley was in the passenger seat, hugging herself, looking blankly out the windshield. She said, "So, do you guys, do this a lot?" "Off and on," said John. "Been doing it for a few years." "How does somebody get into this?" "There was an incident," he said. "A series of incidents, I guess. A dead guy, another dead guy, some drugs. It's kind of a long story. Now we can see things. Sometimes. I have a dead cat that follows me around, wondering why I never feed it. Oh, and I had one hamburger that started mooing when I ate it." He glanced at me. "You remember that?" I grunted and said nothing. "It wasn't mooing, John. It was screaming." Shelley didn't look like she was listening anymore. "I call it Dante's syndrome," John said. I had never heard him call it any such thing. "Meaning, I think Dave and I gain the ability to peer into hell, only it turns out hell is right here, and it's all through us and all around us and in us, like the microbes that swarm through your lungs and guts and veins. Hey, look, an owl." We all looked. It was an owl, all right. "Anyway," I broke in, "we did just a couple of favors for people. Eventually word got around." I felt like that was enough background, and I wanted to stop John before he got to the part where he says he kept eating after that screaming hamburger, down to the last bite. I left the truck running as I jumped out at my place for supplies. I bypassed the house for the weather-worn tool shed in the backyard, opened the padlocked door, and swept over the dark shelves with my flashlight. A Winnie the Pooh toy with dried blood around its eyes, a stuffed and mounted badgerconda, a cross between a badger and an anaconda, a large mason jar filled with cloudy formaldehyde, where inside floated a 6-inch clump of cockroaches arranged roughly in the shape of a human hand. I grabbed a medieval-style torch John had stolen from the wall of a theme restaurant. I picked up a clear squeeze bottle filled with a thick green liquid that immediately turned blood red as soon as I touched it. I reconsidered, sat it back on the shelf, and grabbed my vintage 1987 ghetto blaster instead. I went into the house and called to Molly. I opened a small plastic tub in the kitchen cabinet filled with little pink rubbery chunks like erasers. I put a handful in my pocket and rushed back out the door, the dog following on my heels. Shelley lived in a simple 2-story farmhouse, black shutters on white siding. It sat on an island of turf in a sea of harvest-flattened cornfields. We walked past a mailbox shaped like a cow and saw a hand-painted sign on the front door that read, "The Morrisons, established 1962. John and I had a long debate at the door about whether or not that apostrophe belonged there. Sorry, I know you guys can't see that. I know. If I had a brain, I would have walked away right then. John stepped up, pushed open the front door, and ducked aside. I dug in my pocket and pulled out one of the pink chunks. They were real steak-shaped dog treats, complete with little brown grill lines. I realized at that moment that no dog would know what those grill lines were, and that they were purely for my benefit. "Molly." I shook the treat in front of her and then tossed it through the door. The dog ran in after it. We waited for the sound of, say, dog flesh splattering across a wall, but heard only the patting of Molly's paws. Eventually, she came back to the door, grinning stupidly. We decided it was safe to go in. Shelley opened her mouth as if to express some kind of disapproval, but apparently decided against it. We stepped into the dark living room. Shelley moved to flip on a light, but I stopped her with a hand motion. Instead, John hefted the torch and touched his lighter to it. A foot-tall flame erupted from the head, and we slowly crept through the house by its flickering light. I noticed John had brought along a thermos of his coffee, this favor already qualifying as an all-nighter. I admit the horrific burning sensation really did keep you awake. I asked, "Where do you see him mostly?" Shelley's fingers started twisting at her skirt again. The basement. And one time I saw him in the bathroom. His hand, came up through the toilet while Okay, show us the basement door. It's in the kitchen, but Guys, I don't want to go down there. It's cool, John said. Stay here with the dog. We'll go down and check it out. I glanced at John, figuring that should have been my line as her handsome new nightly protector. We clomped down the stairs, torchlight pooling down the stairwell. Shelley waited behind us, crouching next to Molly and stroking her back. A nice, modern basement, washer and dryer, a hot water heater making a soft ticking sound, one of those waist-deep floor freezers. John said, "He's not here." Big surprise. John used the torch to light a cigarette. "She seems like a nice girl, doesn't she?" John said softly, and with kind of a smarmy wink in his voice. "You know, she reminds me of Amber, Jennifer's friend. When she came to my door for a second, I actually thought it was her. By the way, I want to thank you for coming along, Dave, being my sort of wingman on this. I'm not saying I'm going to take advantage of her distress or anything, but..." I had tuned John out. Something was off, I knew right then, lingering in the back of my mind, like a kid in the last row of the classroom with his hand up. John was acting all detective-y now, leaning over a large sink with a bundle of white cloth draped over the side. "Oh yeah," said John, pulling up a length of cloth. "Take a look at this shit." The garment was white, a single piece with straps, like an apron. Well, it had been white. Once. Now it was mostly smudges of faded blood pink at the center, like a kindergarten kid's rendering of the Japanese flag. I turned to the large floor freezer, that freaking dread again, cold and hard and heavy. I strode over and opened the lid. Oh, jeez. It was a tongue. That's the first thing I saw, rubbery and purplish and not quite human. It was longer, animal-like, twisted inside a Ziploc bag and coated in frost. And it wasn't alone. The freezer was filled with hunks of flesh, some in clear bags, some bigger chunks in pink-stained white paper. Butcher paper, white apron. "Well, I think it's obvious," said John. "Those stories of UFOs that go around mutilating cows? I think we just solved it, my friend." I sighed. "It's a deer, you jackass. Her dad hunts, apparently. They keep the meat." I nudged around and found a frozen turkey, some sausages. I closed the lid to the fridge, feeling stupid, though not for the reason I should have felt stupid. I wasn't thinking. Too late at night, too little sleep. John started poking around in cabinets. I glanced around for the boombox, realizing now that we hadn't brought it down here. Why did that bother me? It was upstairs with Shelley, right? "Hey, Dave, you remember that guy whose basement got flooded, then called us and swore he had a 15-foot great white shark swimming down there?" I did remember, but didn't answer, afraid of losing that thread of thought that kept floating just out of reach, like a wayward balloon on a windy day. Besides, when we got there, it wasn't a great white at all, just a garden variety 8-foot tiger shark. We told the guy to wait until the basement dried out and call us back. When the water left, so did the shark, as if it evaporated or seeped out in the tiny cracks in the concrete. Think. Damned attention span. Something is wrong here. I tried to pull myself back from my tangent, thinking of the boombox again. John had found it at a garage sale. There's a story in the Old Testament, a young David driving away an evil spirit by playing pretty music on his harp. Wait a second. "John, did I hear you say you thought she looked like Amber?" "Yeah." "John, Amber's almost as tall as me. Blonde hair, kind of top-heavy, right?" "Yeah, cute as hell. I mean, and you think Shelley looks like her? The girl sitting upstairs?" "Yeah." John turned to face me, already getting it. "John, Shelley is short with dark hair, blue eyes. They haunt minds. John sighed, plucking out his cigarette and flung it to the floor. Fuck. We turned toward the stairs, took a step up, and froze. Shelley was there, sitting halfway up the stairs, one arm curled around Molly's neck. Innocent, wary eyes, playing the part. I stepped slowly onto the third stair, said, "Tell me something, miss. I'm sorry, I've forgotten your last name." "Shelley is fine." "Yeah, remind me anyway. I hate forgetting things." "Morris." I took another step toward her. That's what I thought. Another step. I heard John step up behind me. "So," I said, "whose house is this?" "What?" "The sign out front says Morrison. Morris' son, not Morris. Now, would you describe your own appearance for me?" "I don't... You see, because John and I have this thing where we're both seeing completely different versions of you. Now, John has eyesight problems because of his constant masturbation, but I don't think..." She burst into snakes. That's right. Her body sort of spilled out of itself, falling into a dark, writhing puddle on the ground. It was a tangle of long, black serpents, rolling over each other and down the steps. We kicked at them as they slithered past, John warding them off with the torch. Some, I saw, had patches of color on their scales, like flesh or the flowered pattern of Shelley's dress. I caught a glimpse of one snake with a writhing human eyeball still embedded in its side, the iris powder blue. Molly jumped back and barked, a little too late, I thought, and made a show of snapping at one of the snakes as it wound its way down the stairs. She bounded to the top of the stairs and disappeared through the doorway. We kicked through the slithering things and stomped up after the dog, just as the stairwell door banged shut on its own. Pardon me for one moment. I'm gonna excuse myself for a drink of water. Hopefully that was a nice little bit of sound. Okay, back to it. I reached for the doorknob. At the same moment, it began to melt and transform, turning pink and finally taking the shape of a flaccid penis. It flopped softly against the door like a man was cramming it through the knob hole from the other side. I turned back to John and said, "That door cannot be opened." We stumbled back down the stairs, John jumping the last 5, shoes smacking on the concrete. The snakes fled from the firelight and disappeared under shelves between cardboard boxes. That's when the basement started filling with shit. The brown sludge oozed up from the floor drain, an unmistakable stench rising above it. I looked around for a window we could crawl out of, found none. The sewage bloomed out from the center of the floor, swirling around the soles of my shoes. John shouted, "There!" I whipped my head in his direction, saw him grab a little plastic crate from a shelf and set it on the floor. He climbed up on it, then just stood there with the muck rising below. Finally, he looked at me and said, "What are you doing? Go and find us a way out of here." I was ankle deep now in a pool that was disturbingly warm. I sloshed around, looking above me until I found the large square duct feeding into the first floor from the furnace, the return air vent. I went to a pegboard on the wall and grabbed a foot-long screwdriver. I jabbed it into the crease between the metal of the duct and the floor, prying down the apparatus with a squeal of pulled nails. I finally got a hold on the edge of the metal duct and felt it cut into my fingers. I pulled it down to reveal the dark living room above me, blocked by a metal grid. I jumped and knocked the grate aside with my hands. I leapt again and grabbed floor with both hands, feeling carpet under my fingers. With a series of frantic, awkward movements, I managed to pull my limbs up until I could roll over on the floor of the living room. I looked back at the square hole and saw a flicker of flame emerge, followed by the torch and then John's hand. In a few seconds, we were both standing in the living room, glancing around, breathing heavily. Nothing. A low, pulsing sound emerged from the air around us. A laugh. A dry, humorless cough of a noise, as if the house itself was expelling the air with its giant lungs of wood and plaster. John said, "Asshole." "John, I'm changing my cell phone number tomorrow, and I'm not giving you the new one. Now let's get this over with." We both knew the drill. We had to draw the thing out somehow. John handed me his lighter. "You light some candles. I'll go stand in the shower naked." Molly followed me as I went back to where we left the boombox and the other supplies. I lit a few candles around the house, just enough to make it spooky. John showered. I found another bathroom and washed the sludge off my shoes and feet. "Oh no," I heard John shout over the running water. "It's dark in here, and here I am in the shower. Alone. I'm so naked and vulnerable." Out of things to do, I walked around for a bit and eventually found a bedroom. I glanced at my watch, sighed, and then lay down over the covers. It was almost 4 a.m. This could go on for hours, or days. Time, that's all they have. I heard Molly plop down on the floor below. I reached down to pet her, and she licked my hand the way that dogs do. I wondered why in the world they felt the need to do that. I've often thought about trying it, next time somebody got their fingers close to my mouth, like at the dentist. John came back 20 minutes later, wearing what must have been the smallest towel he could find. He lowered his voice. "I think I saw a hatch for an attic earlier. I'm gonna see if there's room to crawl around up there. See if maybe there's a big, scary-looking footlocker it can pop out of or something." I nodded. John raised his voice theatrically and said, "Oh no, we're trapped here all alone. I'll go see if I can find help." "Yes," I answered loudly. "Perhaps we should split up." John left the room. I tried to relax, hoping even to doze off. Ghosts love to sneak up on you when you're sleeping. I scratched Molly's head and... sleep. Licking. A soft splashing sound from another room. I dreamed I saw a shadow peel itself off the far wall and float toward me. Most of my dreams are like that, always based on something that really happened. My eyes snapped open, my right arm still hanging over the edge of the mattress, the rough tongue still flapping away at my ring finger. How long had I been out? 30 seconds? 2 hours? I sat up, trying to adjust to the darkness. A faint glow pulsed from the hall where the nearest candle burned away in the bathroom. I quietly stepped off the foot of the bed and headed across the room into the hallway. Down the hall now, toward the sound and the light. I ran my hand along the textured plaster of the wall until I reached... I lost my place. Until I reached the bathroom, the source of the gentle splashing. Not splashing, slurping. I peered in. Molly, drinking from the toilet. She turned to look at me with an almost cat-like, "Can I help you?" stare. I thought absently that she was drinking the poo water with the same mouth she used to lick my hand. If she's in here, then that wasn't her by the bed. I picked the candle off the counter and headed back to the bedroom. I stepped in, the candle casting an uneven halo of light around me, rustling the shadows aside. I moved toward the bed and saw... meat. Dozens of the wrapped and now partially unwrapped hunks from the freezer, laying neatly on the floor next to the bed, in an almost ceremonial fashion, the objects arranged in the rough shape of a man. I moved the light toward the head area, where I found a frozen turkey still in the butterball wrapper. Under it, wedged between turkey and torso, was the disembodied deer tongue, flapping around of its own accord. was different. I jumped back as the turkey, the tongue, and a slab of ribs levitated off the floor. The man-shaped arrangement of meat rose up, as if functioning as one body. It pushed itself up on 2 arms made of game hens and country bacon, planting 2 hands with sausage-link fingers on the floor. The phrase, sodomized by a bratwurst poltergeist, suddenly flew through my mind. Finally it stood fully upright, looking like the mascot for a butcher shop, whose profits went entirely to support the owner's acid habit. "John, we got something here." It was about 7 feet tall, its turkey head swiveling side to side to survey the room, the tongue swaying uselessly below. It extended a sausage to me. "You." It was an accusation. Had we dealt with this thing before? I didn't remember it, but I was bad with faces. "You have tormented me 6 times. Now prepare to meet your doom." I have no way of knowing that it actually said M-E-A-T instead of M-E-E-T, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. I ran. John, we've got a situation 53 here." The thing gave chase, its shaved ham feet slapping the floor behind me. My candle went out. I tossed it aside. I saw a closed door to my right, so I skidded to a stop, threw it open, and flung myself in. Linen shelves smacked me in the face, and I fell back out of the closet, dazed. The meat man wrapped its cold links around my neck and lifted me up. It pinned me against the wall. "You disappoint me. All those times we've dueled, in the desert, in the city, you thought you had vanquished me in Venice, didn't you?" I was so impressed by this thing's ability to articulate words, using that flapping deer tongue and a frozen turkey, that I almost lost track of what it was saying. Venice? Did he say Venice? What? Molly came by just then, trotting along like everything was just A-OK in Dogland. Then she noticed some meat standing nearby and started happily chewing on a 6-inch wide tube of bologna serving as the thing's ankle. It dropped me to the floor. I scrambled to my feet and ran downstairs. The meat man followed. At the foot of the stairs, John was waiting. He was holding the stereo. The monster stopped halfway down the staircase, its eyeless turkey head staring down the device in John's hands, as if recognizing the danger. Oh, how that Old Testament demon must have howled and shrieked at the sight of young David's harp, seeing at work a form of ancient magic that can pierce any darkness. The walking meat horror knew what was coming, that the same power was about to be tapped. John nodded, as if to say checkmate. He pushed the play button. Sound filled the room, a crystal melody that could lift any human heart and turn away any devil. It was Here I Go Again by Whitesnake. The monster grabbed the spots on the turkey where its ears would be and fell to its knees. John wielded the stereo before him like a holy talisman, stepping up the stairs, driving the sound closer to the beast. Every inch of its fat marbled skin and gristle writhed in agony. "Take it," John screamed, suddenly emboldened. "It looks like you should have taken time to beef up on your defenses." The beast grabbed its abdomen, in pain, I thought. Instead, it pried loose a canned ham and, before John could react, hurled it at the stereo, the can whizzing through the air like a Randy Johnson fastball. Direct hit. Sparks and bits of plastic flew. The stereo tumbled out of John's hands and fell heavily to the stairs. Disarmed, John hopped onto the floor as the beast rose to its feet and pursued. It grabbed John by the neck. It snatched at me, but I dodged and grabbed the coffee thermos from the table. I ran back with the thermos, spun off the top, and dashed the contents at the meaty arm that held John. The meatstrosity screamed. The arm smoked and bubbled, then burst into flame. The limb then blackened and peeled off from the socket, falling to the hardwood below. John was free, falling to his knees and gasping for air. The beast howled, collapsing to the floor immediately. With its only remaining arm, it pointed at me. You'll never defeat me, Marconi. I have sealed this house with my powers. You cannot escape. I stopped, put my hands on my hips, and strode up to it. Marconi, as in Dr./Father Albert Marconi, the guy who hosts Magical Mysteries on the Discovery Channel. John stepped over and glared at the wounded thing. You dumbass. Marconi's 50 years old. He has white hair. Dave and I aren't that old combined. Your nemesis is probably off giving some seminar, standing waist-deep in a pile of his own money. The thing turned its turkey at me. Tell you what, I offered. If I can get you in touch with Marconi so you two can work out your little differences, will you release us? You lie. Well, I can get him down here, but surely a being as superhumanly powerful as you can destroy him at a distance, right? Here. Oh, I'm sorry, there he says he can't get him down here. It watched me as I fished out my cell phone and dialed. After talking to a secretary, a press agent, a bodyguard, an operator, the secretary again, and finally a personal assistant, I got through. This is Marconi. My secretary says you have some kind of a meat monster there. Yeah, hold on. I offered the phone to Meaty. Do we have a deal? The thing stood up, hesitated, then finally nodded its turkey up and down. I held out the phone while giving John a dark look that I hoped conveyed the fact that Plan B involved me letting the monster beat the shit out of him while I tried to escape out of a window somewhere. Fucking girl and her ghost boyfriend. Marconi would have seen this shit coming a mile away. A bundle of sausage fingers took the phone from my hand. So, it boomed into the receiver. We meet again, Marconi. You thought you had vanquished me, but I... The beast spontaneously combusted into a ball of unholy blue light. With a shriek that pierced my ears, it left our world. The lifeless meat slapped to the floor piece by piece, the cell phone clattering next to the pile. Silence. Damn, he's good, said John. I walked over and picked up the cell phone. I put it to my ear to ask the doctor what he had done, but it was the secretary again. I switched it off. The doctor hadn't even hung around long enough to say hello. John made a casual hand-dusting motion. Well, that was pretty stupid. I tried the front door and it opened easily. Who knows, maybe it had never been sealed. We took time to straighten up the place, not finding any Morrisons restrained or dismembered, and figuring that Shelley was at least telling the truth when she said the real family was on vacation. The shit had vanished from the basement, but I couldn't fix the heating duct I had messed up earlier. We packed the meat back into the freezer as best we could, with one exception. The sun was already dissolving into the night sky by the time I got home. I opened up the tool shed and set the broken boombox inside. I found an empty jar, filled it from a square can of formaldehyde, and dropped the deer tongue in. I placed it on the shelf next to a stuffed monkey paw, lying lifeless with 2 fingers extended. I locked up and went to bed.